Examples of bases are, for example, many of your household cleaners like Drano, ammonia. Let me actually write that down so that we don't get confused with ammonium. It is 4:44 p.m. Monday. So today, last week I talked about how some of my challenges were, differentiating where students were at in regard to like the whole blended learning self-pace. The standards-based grading seems to be going fine right now in terms of me providing the rubrics and the students looking at it and knowing what they need to know and be able to do in order to get to be proficient. So today, what I did, students took 2 assessments last week, and I started off the class by making sure that they knew how to assess their scores. But then from there, I had a warm-up and it was divided into categories, whether they got a score of a 1, a score of a 2, or a score of a 3. And based on what they got, that's the type of problems that they needed to do. Students that got a score of 1 on one of the assessments, it was assigning oxidation numbers, which they need to be able to know and do in order to do redox reactions. I had them come up to the front, and so students moved around, and I basically did a small group. My first and second period, I had 4 students apiece in both of those classes, and then my fourth period today, I had about like 8 to 10 students. So I went over the warm-up questions with them, and then I threw some practice problems at them. So at that point, they seemed to be getting it because I just walked around to make sure that they were getting it. And then after that, I had created these videos through Camtasia over the weekend. And similar to how I did it in the fall semester, where I did a built-in quiz feature, so it would stop at a certain point and ask them a question, and they couldn't progress through the video until they answered the question. And they also had to use their district email address because it's going to send me an email and I can look at the responses. And so they had to go through 4 of those modules and then answer 2 questions at the very end to demonstrate to me that they understood how to do it. And surprisingly enough, many of the students who either got a 1 or a 2 that got to the end of the 4 videos were able to work those 2 problems. I gave them just like a simple one, and then I gave them a little bit more intermediate one, because that's all they need in order to get a 3. Some of the more harder ones, like if students were trying to get a 3.5 or a 4, then which I had one of those on the assessment, and so I didn't dock them if they got that wrong. I just provided feedback, and so students were still able to make a 3 because they at least understood the basics of being able to do that type of problem. They just needed to come in for help for the more advanced type of redox reaction, or equation, I should say. And then students that got either a 2 or 3, some students got a 2, but I told them that they can choose between either watching the remediation videos or doing the lab, because they had just made too many small errors as they worked through the problem. But I could tell that they understood like the basics. They just like forgot to put like an oxidation number, or they forgot to balance out the charge on both sides, or even balance the equation. And so, but they worked everything through. They had like the idea. So I told them they can pick and choose. If they chose to do the lab today, they can go home and watch. I would trust that they watch the videos at home. And the students that got 3s on both sections, I had some students that got 3.5s. They came back and they did the lab. So on Wednesday, those who did the lab, they're going to move on to the next topic, and those who were watching the remediation videos, I'm going to work with them, but then they're going to come back and do the lab. So today seemed to work pretty well. Beyond me working with a small group up front, I just walked around and circulated, and students called me, who were watching the videos, called me over and asked me clarifying questions, and that's what I want. And the students who did well, who got a 1 earlier on, but then were able to do the problems, I want them to be able to do that. You struggled, okay, great, so now let me work with you one-on-one or small group and make sure that you understand this before you go on. So yeah, that worked well. So I just need to upload the other videos for the next unit, either tonight or I'll do that tomorrow. But I'm gonna go home and enjoy the rest of my evening and get ready for tomorrow. It is 4:42 p.m. Tuesday. So today my B-Day classes did what my A-Day classes did, partly yesterday, and then also what they did on Friday. So they had to take their assessments today as soon as they had submitted them, because they were taking them on the Canvas site. I was able to quickly score them because I had my answer key, and then looked on Canvas to see how they answered. And then at that point I determined where they went, so whether they came back into the lab area and did 2 labs, or they stayed up and watched the remediation videos. So many students did particularly well, and the ones who struggled are the ones who either have not been coming in for help and or have not utilized their time in class wisely. And so, like, I think they saw the other students back in the lab and they wanted to come participate. So they were really focused on trying to show me that they understood, which is great because that's sort of what I was aiming for throughout the school year, and I just didn't implement it effectively as I could have. But now that I'm, I had some experience, kind of trial and error throughout the school year, and then thought a little bit more clearly about how I wanted to do it. Now it seems to be working. Tomorrow, my 8A classes, some students didn't get to finish the lab on Monday, so they got through most of it, but it was 2-part lab, and so they're going to pick up the beginning of class tomorrow. Students who had to watch the remediation videos, I'm going to get with them to see if they understand at that point. And then hopefully my goal is to also sit down with a small group of students and just to kind of go over their assessments, because I didn't release 8A because my B-Day classes had to take the assessment today, and I didn't want to upload that to the Canvas site because I heard through the grapevine that students, and I hear it in my class too, they talk about like their exams in other classes, so I didn't want to have the exam uploaded to the Canvas site in the event, or their feedback uploaded to the Canvas site in the event that they were showing their friends in another class or during lunch. So I'm going to try to sit down with them and just in small group talk about like the mistakes that they made, and just again trying to practice that, getting into the habit of having like small group conversations with students, whether it's just about like their progress in class or about their work on an assessment. So that seemed to go well today. Other than that, that's it. So I'm gonna get my stuff and I'm gonna head home. It is 2:20 p.m. I'm currently making some videos for my classes using my personal laptop. However, my work laptop fell off the Innovation Station cart yesterday, and when I came to work this morning and tried to cut it cut on, but it no longer functions. And it's funny because I just found out like this week that we're getting new technology for teachers this summer in July. So I get to choose, and I actually need to find out, I need to choose soon because the deadline is approaching. So I guess that's a good thing in a sense because I'm getting a new laptop, but it's a bad thing because I need my laptop for the last few weeks of school, and I've had it all this time and I've never dropped it once, and I happened to drop it right when I need to turn it back into the district. So my B-Day classes, they did what my 8A classes did yesterday. This time I guess I struggled a little bit more kind of managing where students were at, because in the last 8A, actually my 8A class is ahead of my B-Day class. So they didn't do what my B-Day classes did yesterday. So they were wrapping up where they were at on Monday. So some students had wrapped up the labs, some students were watching the videos, some students needed to do an assessment, and so just depending on where they were at, that's where, and so like I was kind of all over the place, and it was a little bit weird for me. First period went fine. Second period I felt went a little bit better. We'll see how fourth period goes because I have that in about 30 more minutes. But yeah, so I had a couple students making onto the next module, but again, it's just trying to figure out where, like, students are coming up to me and they're like, yeah, check this, and they're calling me back in the lab, and sorry, I'm playing the video, and they're calling me back in the lab, and so I definitely need to better, I felt like I was doing okay, but it was still a lot for me, so I just need to, again, make sure that I have some type of system for managing all the students and where they're at, or some type of check-in process versus just a whole bunch of students coming up and like standing in a line off to the side waiting their turn, which is great because I get to talk with them one-on-one and go over their paper with them and give them feedback, but then students are just standing there waiting, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna go because I didn't charge my battery today or even yesterday, and it looks like it's about to go out. It is 4:54 p.m. after school. My B-Day students did what my A-Day students did yesterday. So some students started the class doing the lab, some students hadn't watched the remediation videos, some students had been absent the past couple of class days, so they had to do the assessment. There are some students who finished the lab, so they were doing some other problems. I felt like I had a better handle on where everybody was at today compared to yesterday, but I think I just need to kind of get used to the feeling of students being in different places. And then I'm also thinking about coming up with like a tracking sheet that students have to like get me to initial before they move on to something, because one of the things, especially with the lab, is that some of the pairs, because I was up helping other students, they were washing their hands, but then they would leave stuff not put away or the table messy. Whereas like when we done it whole class, I would always make sure that I would check before they sat down, and they had to clean everything before they were able to go back in the classroom. So I need to create a system for them to come check in with me, for me to go back, hold myself accountable so that I can go back there and check as well. But I felt like today I had a better handle on where students were at, but then also my classes weren't as large because there's still testing going on, so I have some students out for either AP testing or depending whether or not they were in an EOC course, and they had to take that test today. Tomorrow I have my B-Day class, so again it's just going to be another, just depending on where the students are at. That's just how my day is going to go. But I'm looking forward to it, and then I'm looking forward to, like, I think we have two more weeks of actually we have like a week of full instruction, which is next week is the last week of full instruction, and then the week after next we begin finals, so I'm excited. School's almost out. TGIF, it is 12:38 p.m. Friday. It's lunchtime right now, so if you hear people, those are my students in the background. So my B-Day classes are doing what my A-Day classes did yesterday. Many of them started the acid-base unit, so I had some students that were out that needed to still take the quiz, so they were doing that. Some students that needed remediation, so I worked with them on that. The other students who were ahead, who finished the lab, started acids and bases. Once I finished with the students that were doing remediation, when the other students got to the end of the acid-base module and I had quizzes built in, they did direct teach. I did a direct teach with them. That's what I'm trying to say. So they either sat in the back or in the front, and I went over some pH calculation problems with them, and so they got to work some practice problems. So it's really weird me trying to balance everything and where everybody's at, but I think I'm getting used to it just with some more practice. And so that's all we're doing today. My 7th period will do the same thing, and then my 8th period, the Cambridge class, the dual credit class, they are taking their post-assessment. Or actually, I think I'm going to try to push it back to Tuesday and see if I can push their final, because they have to turn in their Chromebooks. Seniors have to turn in their Chromebooks early, so that puts me in a bind. So if I can find a place to use computers here on campus that will allow us to do that, then I can push the final back for them an extra week. With that said, I am going to go and enjoy the rest of my day and my weekend as well. Well, that's it. If there was anything about this video that you liked, then make sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and or share the video. If you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe so that way you can bond with James. And if you're interested in checking out some of my other vlogs, you can do so by clicking on any of the links right here. As always, thanks for watching.